Welcome back, everyone. It's great to see you all here again. This is our workshop, Is Media Ruining America? Thank you so much for coming. I'm Rebecca Winning, a volunteer with the League of Women Voters of Jefferson County, and I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Beverly George, fellow volunteer, she's waving in the back there, who did a lot of the heavy lifting on this program. So first, some housekeeping. JUC asked us to make sure that you're all here for the media workshop and not for the training that they're having, the 276 training. So if that's where you want to be, you're in the wrong place. So we want to thank Jefferson Unitarian Church for hosting this event. They've been great partners for the League of Women Voters, and we just really, really appreciate their support. Other housekeeping, there are bathrooms out past the double doors down the left side hallway. If you need to, avail yourselves, feel free whenever. Third, I'd like to request that you silence your cell phones. Finally, I hope you all picked up handouts from the table outside. You should have a couple of things. This, which is the media bias charts. You've seen them before. We're going to be talking about these later. For those of you who are listening at home, you can access the media bias charts at adfontasmedia.com. Next, we have a list of fact-checking websites. We're going to be talking about those later. In a couple of the evaluations, people asked us for the sources that we're using for this data. So we're basically using the Cindy Otis book, this guy right here, a CIA analyst guide to spotting fake news, true or false. But then we reference other magazine articles and whatnot. And so those sources are listed in one of your handouts. We have them for week 3, and we also have them listed for week 4, just in case you want to read ahead. And then we have our evaluation form. And we've changed the form this week. It's different from the evaluation form we used in previous sessions. So we'd really love to get your feedback. So we hope you take a minute to fill this out at the end of the evening. So today we'll be discussing propaganda and polarization, surviving the avalanche of fake news. This is part 3 in our 5-part series, and based on chapters 17 and 18 in the Cindy Otis book. But first, a reminder, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights, ensure that everyone is represented in our democracy. Founded in 1920, its ongoing major activities include registering voters, providing voter information, boosting voter turnout, and advocating for voting rights. It comprises more than 650 state and local leagues, including the Jeffco League, that work tirelessly to empower voters, defend democracy, and take action on state, local, and federal governmental issues. For more information, you can visit LWVJeffco.org. And there are a few league members here, so if you're interested in finding out more, you can chat them up. So far, we've learned how we got here. With the rise of deregulation and advances in technology making it harder and harder to find reliable news sources, we saw how algorithms are pushing us into political corners, into echo chambers, where we focus on the outrage du jour versus constructive policy discussions. And last week, we talked about how our own personal biases can affect our access and understanding of the news and how to combat that. So moving right along, today, This week, we want to focus on how we can combat the avalanche of fake news served up to us each and every day. So, according to Cindy, in the book True or False, she reminds us that the internet opened the floodgates to fake news. Once people learned they could make money by posting fake content with very little personal risk, all bets were off. So, this had an immediate impact on partisan politics. As Otis explains, quote, "Since the early days of the internet, partisan fake news websites have been popular, particularly during elections. Early versions of these sites published false statistics about government issues or policies to confuse voters, or gave inaccurate information about how to vote in order to actually stop people from voting. They also published false information about candidates running for office, and often bought domain names similar to the actual candidate's name, just to confuse potential voters looking on the internet for information about them. Otis uses as an example 2 websites put up in 1999 by individuals purporting to represent then presidential candidate George Bush. GeorgeWBush.com, which presented a digitally altered photo of George Bush doing drugs, and BushCampaignHQ.com, which included false and misleading information about him. Both were labeled as parody websites, but both got shared and spread universally and attracted an enormous amount of attention. So BushCampaignHQ.com received nearly 6.5 million views in just the first month it was up, while Bush's actual website only got 30,000 views in the same time period. Fast forward to the 2024 election, with the growing adoption of generative AI, and the internet was rife with organized attempts to sway voters, twist perceptions, and make people believe negative material about candidates and issues. For example, screenshots falsely attributed to The Atlantic and other mainstream publications that claimed candidates planned to steal the election. These were AI-generated images designed to look authentic. Or a viral post alleging that millions of mail-in ballots were pre-filled or discarded. Election officials confirmed that these claims were baseless. Or one video that featured a Haitian man, not really from Haiti, saying he just arrived in the US and had voted in 2 elections in Georgia, one in Gwinnett County and one in Fulton County. But it turned out to be a fake video made in Russia. So we briefly touched on efforts by foreign adversaries to harm our elections in week 1. It's such a threat to our democracy that it bears further investigation. According to Otis, in 2017, the 17 agencies that make up America's American intelligence community published an unclassified assessment saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin himself directed an operation to influence our elections. His goal was to undermine the public's faith in the US democratic process and to influence the outcome of the election. If you remember, prior to the 2016, that gave rise to the Internet Research Agency we discussed earlier. If you remember, prior to the 2016 election, they created thousands of fake social media accounts that looked like they belonged to real Americans, and they posted YouTube videos, memes, websites, and digital ads on social media sites. By the summer of 2016, they were spending more than $1.25 million a month on disinformation campaigns, and they had hundreds of employees. Russia, Iran, and China have refined their tactics from 2016 and 2020, posting convincing memes, fake surveys, and divisive narratives targeting swing states. The annual threat assessment that you see here, published by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in March of 2025, suggests that malign foreign actors will increasingly use generative AI to fortify their influence operations. I just want to share a couple of quotes that came directly from that assessment. Here's one. People's Republic of China. Those actors have increased their capabilities to conduct covert influence operations and disseminate disinformation. For example, pro-China online actors in 2024 used AI-generated news anchors and fake social media accounts with AI-generated profile pictures to sow divisions in issues such as drug use, immigration, and abortion. And here's another one. Russia is using AI to create highly capable deepfakes to spread disinformation, conduct malign influence operations, and stoke further fear. Moscow probably believes information operations efforts to influence US elections are advantageous because reinforcing doubts about the integrity of the US electoral system achieves one of their key goals. According to American historian Heather Cox Richardson, as recently as November 2025, quote, a new feature on X, formerly Twitter, that permitted users to see where accounts originate, revealed that a number of high-engagement MAGA accounts that claimed to be those of patriotic Americans were in fact from Eastern Europe, Bangladesh, Chile, Thailand, Russia, India, and Nigeria. Since X pays certain content creators for tweets that drive engagement, posters from other countries have a financial incentive to post material that feeds the anger of American users and thus will get reposted. Here's another example. An account that calls itself Ultra MAGA Trump 2028, claiming to be based in Washington, D.C., was actually based in Africa. Another now deleted account called Trump is My President was listed as being based in Macedonia. And the Barron Trump news account, which commands nearly 600,000 followers, was traced back to Eastern Europe. So X found dozens of these accounts, all making money from duping Americans. And here's a screenshot from Meta's own transparency report from the third quarter of 2025. It shows the number of fake accounts they found and took action on, ranging from 2018 through the third quarter of 2025. Well, you can see that the numbers range from just over 500 million in the third quarter of 2025 to as high as well over 2 billion in 2019. And these are just the accounts they found to be fake and took down. So as disinformation campaigns continue to grow in sophistication, you can expect the number of fake accounts to grow. So before we go any further, I just want to do a little show of hands. First of all, how many of you did the homework from week 1 where you went out and looked at media outlets that were promoting a different political persuasion than your own? Oh, good, because we're going to be talking about this a little later. How many of you follow politics on social media or digital media? Yeah, almost everybody. How many of us share those political postings with friends and family? Lots of people. Now, how many of us know what our kids and grandkids are watching and sharing? Nobody. Now that is a scary thing. Remember our discussion of all the examples of fake news in the 2024 election? Here's just some reminders. A lot of fake news about COVID responses, Haitians eating the dogs and eating the cats in Ohio, fake celebrity endorsements, news about election fraud, economic narratives, disaster responses. So let's just take a break here. Who can share examples of fake news we've seen more recently? There's a lot of it out there. Don't be shy. Oh, and we have, if you raise your hand, we have people with mics who can get to you so that the people who are online can hear us.
Yes, I just saw today there was something shown about Kristi Noem about taking over this SHIELD organization, and it was off the Monroe Doctrine, and they were saying that it was designed to take over South America by the Americans. And then when I started looking it up and seeing what it was really about, it's not, but it is a little not as nefarious, but whoever put it up was really trying to scare people about possibility of going to war to the south of us.
There we go. And we saw another hand over here. Did we get it?
Well, I don't know if it's fake news or not, but it's hot enough that it's worth kind of questioning. I heard that a general had told some of the servicemen that they were on a mission from God to bring about the Armageddon sooner. I have no idea whether it's true or not, but it's one that I think warrants a little more investigation to see what's really true about that statement.
Yeah. So far, fake news. You can tell what's on my brain. So far, Snopes has not been able to verify that as fact, but it's early, so we'll see. So just a quick look. Anybody else? I don't want to fake news. Here we go.
I was listening this afternoon to Sean Hannity. I have to take a deep breath and listen to him. He's on 760 Freedom Radio. And after him is a gentleman called Jesse Kelly. And he started off rambling about communists and how communists lie all the time. Then he jumped to The View. And he said, do you know how many women watch The View every day? They're brain-dead commie women on Xanax watching The View. And then he went in from that, he went into, Jasmine Crockett can't go back to the Senate, so you know who's going to replace her is her black pastor who preaches communism in Texas. And she represents a dirtball district. And well, if you have a dirtball district, you elect dirtballs. I mean, he just went on it, and then he said, we all hate Ilhan Omar. She should be denaturalized, deported, she's so dumb. Then it was AOC, and then I shut off the radio and came in.
Right. I mean, if you're paying attention, this kind of stuff is going on all the time. Now, in preparation for this, because I was afraid people wouldn't jump in, I just went to Snopes.com to see what they've identified as fake news recently. So following the 2025 assassination of Charlie Kirk, multiple widely shared posts falsely claimed that Erica Kirk made a dramatic entrance at the alternative Super Bowl halftime show. She was secretly cut out of her late husband's will. She lost children. She lost custody of her children. And even more nefarious postings with unsubstantiated allegations claiming she was involved in child trafficking. So, well, that's an earlier one. But they're also After Jesse Jackson passed, there were lots of rumors claiming that his family publicly barred Obama from attending his memorial service. Not true. And it's coming up again. We've all seen this in previous election cycles, that Ilhan Omar married her brother. Like, it comes up like clockwork every 6 months or so, despite the fact that it's been proven to be completely false. So then I want to talk about, what about examples of divisive partisan reporting from your homework? Where have you seen examples where the right is characterizing events completely differently from the way that the left is characterizing events? Anybody? Oh, there's one in the back.
Well, with the current situation in Iran, you get two completely opposite sides of the coin there, and why we're there. And while it is unclear why we're there, you have some on the right standing staunchly behind Mr. Trump and others, saying this could be an endless war. So,
Yes, lots of opining about what's going to happen when nobody really knows. Here's another one right here in the front.
There was very divisive presentation of information when the two people were shot in Minnesota.
Oh.
And the way that was presented, terrorists versus, family person with children, et cetera. So they skewed it both ways.
Exactly. Other examples? Oh, did I see, is there a hand back there? No? Okay, well, I did look up a couple because I wanted to be sure we could, populate this discussion. But when you look at the Epstein files, like everyone on the left everyone on the right is focusing on Bill Clinton and the Democrats and saying that it's the Democrats that are all over the Epstein files and responsible for all of this child trafficking or whatever that went on. And on the other side, the left is focusing on the fact that files are missing from what was put out by the Department of Justice, claiming that it's a cover-up and they're protecting Donald Trump. Two completely different narratives. And then when you talk about Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security on the right, they're claiming that they have complete control of the border, that this has been a massive success, and that they're taking criminals off the streets, criminals, rapists, gang members, and people who are dangerous to America. On the other side, they're focusing on the overly aggressive policing tactics of ICE and the resulting kind of threat to civil liberties of immigrants and others, and reporting that only 70% of the immigrants in custody have any kind of a criminal background. And then, what'd I say? Oh, other way. Only 30% are criminals. 70%, thank you for correcting me, have no criminal background at all. Two completely different views of reality. And then, and this is one that I found really interesting, and it goes to a question we got last week or the week before when people were saying it's easy to find examples of fake news on the right, but it's harder to find examples of fake news on the left. And really, all you have to do is take 15 minutes to poke around, and you'll see that everybody's doing it. But I got caught up in this one because they were talking about the fact that Donald Trump used the War Powers Act in, against the Constitution. that his bombing Iran was illegal. He should have gotten Congress's approval. It's unconstitutional and needs to be impeached. Well, then I was looking at stuff on the other side, and it turns out that President Obama did exactly the same thing in 2011 when he bombed Libya. He invoked the War Powers Act to go in against Gaddafi, claiming he wanted to protect American protesters. He didn't get Congress's approval. He did inform them 48 hours later, just like Trump did, as you're required to do by law. But he never did get approval. And those bombings went on for 7 months in Libya with over 10,000 different sorties, or whatever you call it, to bomb the citizens of Libya. So you've got the same stuff going on, but the narratives are completely different. So if we're really paying attention to partisan media, we're living in two completely different worlds. The potential damage to our democracy is staggering. According to Otis, in 2018, MIT released results of a study about the biggest news stories in English that were shared, bless you, on Twitter from 2006 to 2017. All in all, the researchers looked at around 126,000 stories shared by more than 3 million users. And the study found that fake news and rumors overwhelmingly reached more people and spread a whole 6 times faster than true stories. Fake political news, more than any other category of false information on social media, reached more people faster and went deeper into their personal networks. So, here's some shocking statistics. According to Demand Sage, it's a company that helps companies use data to gain insights into their businesses. In 2025, fake news continued to pollute the internet at an alarming rate, with 62% of online content now deemed to be false. And in the US, 80% of adults have consumed fake news, and 23% admit to sharing false stories, whether knowingly or not. And it's not just digital media and the internet. 44% of global news consumers have received false news in print media. And additionally, 51% of global news consumers reported having seen fake news on television. Sadly, fake news is increasingly used as a deliberate political strategy to manipulate public opinion, discredit opponents, and consolidate power. Politicians and campaigns deploy misinformation, not just accidentally, but intentionally, to shape narratives, distract from scandals, and mobilize supporters. They're increasingly focused on how people's emotional and identity-based attachments to their political groups fuel hostility toward the opposition, and they're working to boost that. This has given rise to a new phenomenon called effective polarization, where people in one political group tend to feel positively toward their own group, but negatively toward the other. According to Sean Westwood, director of the Polarization Research Lab, about 86% of Americans have nothing positive to say about those on the other side of the political aisle. And up to a quarter of Americans actually see them as evil or bad. Now you can remember all the terms they were using in the clip with Levitt and Hakeem Jeffries, where they're calling each other, demented delusional, Hamas terrorists, whatever. It's gotten really bad. And when Pew Research asked Americans what one word they would use to describe politics today, the most popular response was divisive. And the others weren't much better. You've got corrupt, messy, crazy, polarized, chaos. This is the world we live in. Now let's take a look at how fake news is driving us apart. So first we want to talk about headlines. We saw some of this in our session on bias. As we learned, headlines aren't written to inform us, they're written to trigger us. Consider these statistics. A 2018 study by the Media Insight Project showed that only 4 out of 10 Americans said they read more than just the headline of any news article. We're all looking for sound bites. And a more recent study by Columbia University and Microsoft found that as many as 80% of their readers never make it past the headline. Headlines appealing to, a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology found that headlines that appeal to our own cognitive biases triggered up to 42% more engagement than neutral headlines. And as a 2023 study in Nature Human Behavior showed, emotionally charged headlines can increase sharing by over 20%, even if the underlying content is false or misleading. Consequently, fake news sites and some media outlets have learned to use sensational or misleading headlines to trigger people, drive engagement, get people to react emotionally, and share articles without ever reading them. Here's some examples. Obama signs executive order banning the Pledge of Allegiance in schools nationwide. Or Trump ordered execution of Obama-pardoned turkeys. Okay. Are we outraged yet? Like, have we fired these and other headlines off to our friends and allies on social media? Like how many? How many share headlines they see? I would bet it's a lot of people. So here's some things to watch out for when you're evaluating headlines. Emotional triggers. Headlines that evoke emotions like fear or outrage. Cognitive biases, headlines that reinforce your own beliefs or trigger confirmation bias. Curiosity gaps, like we've all seen these. Creating information gaps in headlines to generate strong curiosity that leads to higher click-through rates. So a great example is, I ate McDonald's every day for a month, and this is what happened to me. Or, shocking details about the Jeffrey Epstein files. Fourth, offering proof. Often adding data or statistics to a headline, whether they're true or false, can lend an air of credibility. So be careful. So what's the big takeaway? Always beware of what you share. Never share a headline on impulse. Always investigate the truth of headlines and articles before you share with anyone. There's enough garbage circulating out on the internet without us adding to it. Now I want to talk about fake news trends. Remember when Biden was president and viral posts and partisan commentary kept asserting that Biden was ruining the US economy? We still hear that Biden destroyed our country nearly every day. Fact checkers note that while inflation surged during Biden's term, largely due to impacts from COVID, the economy also experienced record job growth and a strong rebound in GDP after the pandemic. The narrative ignores these complexities, and in fact, by most measures, Biden handed Trump a sound economy, with all three stock indices reaching record highs in 2024, annualized GDP growth of 2.8%, unemployment at 4.1%, and inflation down to 2.9%. Not that different from what we're seeing today. Then, fast forward, and remember when Trump announced his tariffs in April? For much of that year, pundits warned that they would ruin the economy, cause soaring inflation, bring everything down, and the warnings were strident and consistent. Admittedly, they caused uncertainty in the financial markets, but as of just this January 2026, despite slowing job growth, consumers were spending, GDP was growing, the stock market was roaring, and overall inflation was coming down. So, this picture has been muddied by current events with Iran, etc. But you get the idea. Political parties put out fake news about their opponents just to vilify the opposition, and people believe it. Here's another one. In late August 2025, social media posts claimed convicted sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell confirmed the existence of secret videotapes by her associate, Jeffrey Epstein, showing U.S. President Donald Trump and former U.S. President Bill Clinton involved in nefarious activities. A review by Snopes, a well-known fact-checking website, found that as of 11/25, there was no publicly available evidence that such tapes ever existed, and no indication that Maxwell ever made that claim. So these articles do very little to inform consumers about the important issues of the day, but they do serve to further inflame partisan politics and intensify political division. So how can we combat this? First, again, beware of what you share. And then Otis offers the other suggestions. Check the URL of an article. You can use domain checking websites like whois.com to look up and confirm domain registration details, so you know if you're seeing the actual George Bush account or some fake account claiming to be George Bush. Check the date of the article. Is someone recycling old news? I'm seeing a lot of that right now, where they're showing attacks on ships that are coming from like 4 or 5 years ago. But if all you see is the picture and the headline, you're like, oh my God. Investigate the source of the information. Is it legitimate? Could it be coming from a foreign troll? Watch out for spelling and grammar mistakes, a sure sign that it's not legitimate news. And then see if other outlets are reporting on it. Identify who is telling the story and why. Do some background checking on the author. And look at where the author got their information. See what sources they're citing. Are they reputable? Ask yourself if there's more to the story. And a lot of these news articles kind of trigger that question. Like, what? And then you can go to fact-checking websites to see if they're true or not. I have one caveat about this is, there's a difference between fake news and satire. So satire is meant to be humorous, exaggerated, or absurd. Its goal is commentary, not deception. But fake news is meant to be misleading. It's meant to mislead, manipulate, or provoke a reaction by pretending to be real. So common satire outlets, like Babylon Bee on the right or the Borowitz Report on the left, provide some comedic relief from all of the insanity we're dealing with today. But you can tell because they claim, they're known to be humor or parody, and they actually identify themselves as satire, humor, or parody. Fake news, on the other hand, they're often obscure and unfamiliar. They may mimic real branding. They frequently lack an about page where you can go find out who the heck they are or what they're doing. And they sometimes use URLs that look like real outlets, but with small changes. So, quick test. If the site openly describes itself as satire or humor, it's satire. If it hides its purpose, it's fairly likely that it's misinformation. One warning: it's tempting to share satirical content, especially headlines. I mean, sometimes they're hilarious. But they can go viral and then be misconstrued as fake news, especially if the content is not identified as satire when you share it. So, fortunately, there are a number of fact-checking websites you can access to test the veracity of the information. We have them listed on your handout. You take that home. It's sites like apnews.com, Reuters.com, Snopes.com, MediaNewsFactCheck.com, etc. There's a bunch of them. Also, on the back of your handout, it'll kind of tell you if they're mostly centrist or if they lean a little bit left or lean a little bit right. You can actually subscribe to Snopes.com, and they'll send you a weekly email with a summary of all the fake news they've identified that week. Or you can follow many of these sites on Facebook, like Media News Fact Check, PolitiFact, or Pointer, and they'll put up in real time things that they find to be fake news. And it's amazing to see how much fake news is going on every single day of our lives. There's also an organization known as the Trust Project, a complex international consortium involving over 100 news organizations that work together towards greater transparency and accountability in the global news industry. They've created a set of digital standards called trust indicators to help identify and surface high-quality reporting and reliable news sites. You can check them out at thetrustproject.org. So now, we've covered a lot of material. Are there any questions about what we've covered so far? Questions or concerns? Do we need to take a break? People need to, oh, wait, we have a, oh, yeah, question.
One thing that's a little confusing to me is fake news is actually news that's false. There's no factual basis to it, correct? That's totally separate from a lot of like cable news networks when you watch them. A lot of it is opinion.
Yes.
And you can see that it's opinion. You can usually tell that it's opinion. But opinion is not fake news. That's their opinion, correct?
But the opinion can be based on stories that are fake. So you have to be careful. And that's where the ad fontes charts come in to help you identify where to go for reliable media. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Any other questions? Anybody need a break? Stand up, get a cookie. Just keep going, plowing ahead? Okay, here we go. Now let's talk about polling. Polls measure how the public or a certain subset of the public feels at a specific point in time about particular topics. So on November 11th, 2025, Donald Trump posted the following to his social media platform, Truth Social, in all caps: "I have just gotten the highest poll numbers of my political career." And then he went on to describe all of his accomplishments that were driving this incredibly high poll number. Meanwhile, Ballotopedia, often hailed as the digital encyclopedia of American politics and elections, was reporting the following. At the end of November, polling averages showed President Donald Trump at 42% approval, the lowest of his second term. So, how do we know who to believe? November 3rd is the date of the midterm elections coming up. So weeks before the spring primaries in June, you're going to hear more about polls than you hear about Kathy Sabin predicting the weather on Channel 9. It's going to be everywhere. And as Election Day approaches, you'll see lots of polling companies and polls that may be cited in covering campaigns. So how do we know if a poll is reliable? So Otis gives us a list of questions to ask. How is the poll framed? Watch out for poll results that are labeled historic or shocking. Do some research to see how the quote-unquote shocking results compare to what other polling organizations have found. Who sponsored and conducted the poll? Was it an organization with a vested interest in the outcome? If the cigarette companies were sponsoring polls on the health benefits of cigarettes, you should be a little bit suspicious. Then see how the poll was conducted. Was it done with a random sample of folks via telephone? Was it conducted over the internet, which is less reliable? Or even an exit poll, which can really be misleading? Most reliable pollsters will publish their methods so that you can see how they're conducted. Look for polling that utilizes random samples. The only way a survey of 1,500 people polled can come close to representing the general public's view is if people who participate have been selected randomly. You don't want to go poll 1,500 people from a Biden rally or a Trump rally and call it legitimate. Then check the sample size. To get an accurate reading of public opinion, you have to have a reasonable number of participants. Asking 1,000 people gives you more complete results than asking 20 or 50. A typical size for a reliable poll is between 1,000 and 1,500 people, and that's if participants are selected randomly. When and over how long a time period was the poll conducted? Make sure the poll was conducted recently enough to still be valid. Look at the margin of error. That tells you how close we can reasonably expect the results to be accurate. If you can, look at the data yourself. See how the questions were asked. In some cases, they can be asked in such a way as to influence the response. Check out the demographics of the respondents and how they were selected. Pay attention to the undecideds. A large number of undecideds can make results virtually useless. Then remember to look at the results from another angle. Data from polls can be manipulated. Look past the headlines to see the full results of the polling and see if the results match those of other reliable pollsters. So there are a couple of really reliable polls that are known to be reliable sources for polls and reporting. They have long-standing reputations for reliability and integrity. They've been around for a long time, like Quinnipiac University and Pew Center research polls, which are both considered to be reliably framed and reported. Let's just take a look at Quinnipiac. Frequently cited by national and international media outlets, public officials, and researchers, the independent Quinnipiac University poll is regarded as the gold standard and one of the most trusted names among polling organizations. Their polls cover policy, politics, and issues of public concern, and the Quinnipiac survey results are often cited by the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Associated Press, BBC, Reuters, NBC, CBS, Fox News, MSNBC, and more. Its methodology describes sample sizes being large, over 1,000 people, and they use random digit phone dialing to give everyone an equal chance of being selected for their polling. Quinnipiac uses recent census data of 18 and older populations for weighting purposes. Weighting is a statistical adjustment of the data to make sure that you're getting balance in gender, age, education, race, etc. And they're weighted to give you reliable responses. And let's look at Pew. Pew Research Center is a nonpartisan fact tank that informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends shaping the world. They conduct public opinion polling, demographic research, content analysis, and the other data-driven social science research. They never take a policy position. They conduct US surveys on the American Trend Panel, which is a national survey panel of 10,000 randomly selected US adults. They're recruited offline using random sampling from the US Postal Service's residential address file. And Pew also collects custom data from special populations like Muslim Americans, Black Americans, teenagers, Hispanics, that are not readily studied using national general population sampling. So they try to give you a full picture of what's going on in America. There are other really highly rated polling organizations like New York Times Siena College Poll, Marquette University Law School Poll, Monmouth University Polling Institute, Emerson College Poll, etc. And then you have the Gallup poll that has a long history dating from the 1930s, making it a familiar name among polling organizations. Gallup is respected for its global survey of public opinion. It uses scientific methods like random sampling to ensure its results reflect real public sentiment. Sadly, Gallup just announced that they will no longer measure presidential approval ratings after 88 years, possibly in response to the current political environment. Most of these groups are transparent about the methodology they use to gather opinion data. This info is front and center on their websites with links into deeper weeds for those who want them. So just be careful to access reputable polling data whenever possible. Now, next up, fake photos and videos. With the growing availability of artificial intelligence, fake photos and videos are all over the internet. Anyone, any of us here, could use AI software to alter photos and videos to advance an agenda. This is especially scary because researchers have discovered that a photograph can make us 60 to 70% more likely to believe a claim. And according to Otis, deep fake videos are creating a real concern that they could even lead to violence or even start wars. And they've come close to doing that in some foreign countries. So here are a couple of examples. On September 4th, 2025, Fox News aired a 2.5-minute segment spotlighting protests outside a federal immigration and customs enforcement field office in Portland. When President Donald Trump told reporters on September 5th he was going to send the National Guard to Portland, he said it was because of news he saw on television. He said the city was being destroyed by paid agitators. What they've done to that place, it's like living in hell, he said. But in fact, the video Fox used with the story was video taken at a George Floyd protest in July of 2020. Then, Right here, recently, a deepfake video spread on social media allegedly showing US President Donald Trump and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein at a social gathering with young girls. One mid-November 2025 Instagram post captioned the photo, "A normal clip of Trump and Epstein watching girls dance in 1993. The purported footage spread wildly across multiple platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and Threads. However, the video is not authentic. It uses a real photograph taken in 1997, but then was altered using generative AI intelligence tools and posted all over the internet. These fake news postings are proliferating all over digital media, and more people are getting sucked into a sad cycle of view, react, share, and repeat. And it's bad enough that we're seeing these things, but who knows what our kids are seeing, liking, and sharing when they're getting most, if not all of their news now from digital media. And our country is getting more divided every day. Gone are the days when Americans accessed largely renewable, reliable news sources and generally operated on the same set of facts in having policy discussions. Therefore, also gone are the days when politicians routinely brokered deals across the aisle and Republican and Democratic voters could disagree on policy, yet still get along over the dinner table. Instead, polarization has transformed the democratic process, which once thrived on compromise and respectful dialogue, into a winner-takes-all battleground of dysfunction and animosity. A study published by the Pew Research Center in July 2025 found that 8 in 10 US adults say that when it comes to important issues facing the country, Republican Democratic voters not only disagree on plans and policies, but they cannot agree on basic facts. And 53% say a major reason we don't agree on basic facts is that Republican and Democratic voters are getting different information altogether. So let's look at how political polarization has changed over the years. This data from the Pew Research Center shows changes in the partisan divide from 1994, kind of before the media changes really took off, to 2017. So you can see the divide growing larger and larger. So if you look at this one from 1994, the big blue mountain on the left is showing kind of Democratic values. The big red mountain on the right is showing Republican values. And the big blue spot right in the middle is showing where those values overlap and where the parties can agree, or at least compromise. Then you move to 2017, when fake media really started to proliferate. The blue mountain has moved farther left, the red mountain has moved farther right, and the little area in the middle where we agree is shrinking. And that was 2017. Just imagine what this looks like now. So, according to Medium.com, this growing polarization comes with increasingly severe consequences. Research has shown that political polarization has led to the following ramifications. We're segregated in our own communities. Even residential communities are becoming more and more politically homogenous. Our political culture is more and more antagonistic. Campaigns are more negative and focus more on tearing opponents down than talking anything like policy, or even building themselves up. Tearing your opponent down, main objective. Our families are being undermined. Families that cross political parties are seeing shorter dinners and are reluctant to have cross-partisan discourse. They're afraid to talk about it together. We're losing trust in key institutions. Higher education, the press, military, libraries, and other institutions are becoming less trusted. And all of these threaten our democracy, and left unchecked, can even lead to violence. In fact, we're seeing violent, politically driven crimes in recent years. There's been an incredible increase in threats to judges who rule in a way that the opponents don't like. In fact, in 2020, we saw the murder of U.S. District Judge Esther Salas's son. A guy came to the door, shot the son, shot the husband. The son died. The husband was egregiously wounded. And more recently, we've had 2 assassination attempts on our president. And in 2025, 4 Minnesota legislators were gunned down in their homes. 1 died. State Representative Melissa Hortman. It's a very scary environment. And in the article up here, they gave this warning, quote, "If the U.S. were to continue down its current path, there may be more serious costs that jeopardize citizens' personal freedoms, their safety, and the stability of the nation as a whole." So what's a body to do? Well, here's some suggestions. First, seek out credible centrist news sources that avoid overly political sites. And for those of you who may have missed our first 2 meetings, I want to throw this up again. I want to refer you to these Ad Bontes media bias charts. If you remember, they rate media on 2 axes. So the left axis rates media according to how credible they are, how much of their reporting is fact-driven. Those are those at the top, all the way down to the corners where the news outlets are promoting misleading information or containing fabricated information. And then they rank media along the bottom axis. In the center is where you'll find the centrist, most balanced media. And as you move farther and farther left, you get farther and farther into, or farther and farther right. When you get out into the corners, down at the bottom, those outlets are delivering extreme hyper-partisan opinions. So if you want to choose centrist media, you kind of want to keep yourself in that top box where the green dotted lines are, where you have the most reliable, most centrist media. Next, be skeptical. Avoid outrage postings and political messaging altogether, unless you're sure you're following a credible, trusted resource. Don't share anything unless you absolutely know it's true. And ask yourself before you share anything, does this contribute to rational discourse or just drive outrage and political polarization? Diversify your resources. Seek out information that presents both sides of an issue. This is a responsibility we have to take to actually look and not be manipulated. If you see blatant falsehoods in social media, you can gently correct them and direct people to facts and data. This may seem dicey, given the tone of political discourse these days, but a meta-analysis of 13 different studies showed that 60% of people who are presented, again, gently, with factual information will sometimes come to adopt more accurate beliefs. Limit doom scrolling for yourselves, for your children and grandchildren. If you remember from week 1, Americans spend an average of 12 hours a day consuming media, 8 hours on digital media, 4 hours in more traditional media sources. That is way too much. Like, tamp it down. And finally, don't be afraid to share your concerns about fake news with others, especially your family members, your kids, and your grandkids. No matter how much you fear contentious conversations at the holiday table, it's worth it to try to raise awareness about this issue. There's some other things you can do on the policy front. If you remember, we talked about the demise of local news, where hedge funds are buying up local news outlets and changing the character of local news. So you can support local news and public broadcasting. There are a number of nonprofit news organizations in Colorado that don't rely on corporate or political funding, and they adhere to standard journalistic practices. Colorado Public Radio, a nonprofit organization that provides news, information, and music to enrich the Colorado community, and its sister, National Public Radio. PBS, the Public Broadcasting System, a non-commercial, free-to-air television network providing educational programming to public television stations in the U.S. and its local affiliates, Rocky Mountain PBS. Support them. Send them money. The Colorado Sun, an online journalist-founded, award-winning nonprofit news outlet that covers all of Colorado, aiming to educate the public and tell complex stories. The Denver Post, a daily print newspaper, one of the few remaining. Subscribe to help keep it alive. And Colorado Community Media, which is hyper-focused on local news. They offer weekly print newspapers covering multiple communities throughout the Front Range, including the Arvada Press, Canyon Courier, Golden Transcript, Jeffco Transcript, Littleton Independent, and more. The National Trust for Local News, which helps communities keep local news in local hands, providing capacity building and infrastructure support. And the Colorado News Conservancy, a collaboration by the National Trust for Local News and the Colorado Sun, aiming to keep local news organizations local. These organizations play a vital role in providing news and information to the community, contributing to a more informed and engaged citizenry. Other things, we can demand meaningful regulation that promotes the public interest by fostering a diverse range of voices and perspectives within the media landscape, that protects consumers from misleading or harmful content, contributing to a more informed public, that maintains fair competition within the media industry by preventing monopolies, that ensures accuracy, fairness, and accountability in media reporting, that protects vulnerable groups such as children from inappropriate or harmful content, that protects privacy and digital rights by regulating data collection, tracking, and surveillance practices, and ensuring what users understand and control about how their information is used. We need to work together to create conditions where trustworthy information can thrive, competition remains fair, and citizens are protected from this manipulation or harm. In an era of digital platforms, AI-driven content, declining local news, these goals are more important than ever. So here's some good news. The good news, no matter how divided we feel, we have more in common than we know. A 2024 AP NORC poll found that 9 out of 10 Americans still agree on core American values, on core beliefs about what it means to be an American. A Walton Family Foundation report found broad agreement on the importance of compromise, 88%. And Christopher Ball, professor of sociology and author of the book Breaking the Social Medium Prison, noted the following: surprisingly few people are actually in political echo chambers, he said. The bigger problem is the growing gap between social media and reality. Right now, 73% of tweets about politics are generated by only 6% of Twitter users, and that 6% has very extreme views. So you add in the foreign operators posing as Americans, the bots that are just sending out information automatically. It really is, they make us feel more divided than we really are. So, here are the key takeaways. Fake news is proliferating across multiple media every day. In my humble opinion, it's a 5-alarm fire. Oh, sorry. People are using fake news to manipulate us, including malign foreign actors. Algorithms are deepening our divisions. Political polarization really threatens our democracy right now. But we can fight it by consuming media responsibly, supporting local and public media, and promoting sound public policy. Oh, now I've really... There we go. So here's my advice. Take a break from digital media. Get off your digital devices. Stop doom scrolling and monitor the time you spend on digital channels. Unfollow political hacks on Facebook, YouTube, Substacks and podcasts, other digital, even digital media news platforms, and limit your interactions to family and friends and the occasional credible commentator. Access centrist media and credible resources. Monitor your kids' access. Be wise consumers of media. And finally, help us spread the word. Recommend this workshop to others. So, get outside, exercise, invite people over for dinner, and focus on bringing our divisions together, bridging our divisions versus inflaming them. We'll all be the better for it. So next up, next week, we're going to be covering artificial intelligence and its potential to change our lives and our democracy, the fourth part of our 5-part series. And then we have our panel of experts in session 5. Before we quit, special thanks to our graphic designers, Ray Grosser, who did our slide design and production, Andrew Tinch, who gave us all our marketing materials, and special thanks to our advisors and panelists. This is who you'll be hearing from in week 5. Dr. Philip Chen, PhD, Associate Professor of Political Science, University of Denver. Bob Steele, retired journalism professor and ethics and values scholar. Dr. Chris Jennings, Professor and Chair of the Journalism and Media Production Department at Metropolitan State University. Larry Rickman, co-founder and publisher of the Colorado Sun. And Dr. Angelica Kalika, Assistant Teaching Professor of Journalism at the University of Colorado Boulder. So that's it for this session. We have plenty of time to take questions. Any questions? Microphone. Luann.
I have a question about polls. Do they identify themselves when they call you? Because I tend not to answer any questions unless I know who I'm talking to.
You know,
So usually I ask, but you know, who's speaking? They say, is this Luann? And who's speaking if I don't recognize
I don't
them.
know that they, and if anyone in the audience has a better answer, step up. I don't know that they do. I think they just say we're getting opinions about this, and Anybody? They do it, so they say this is from Pew. So they're saying that they do always identify themselves. So. Others?
I no longer do any of those surveys on the phone. First of all, we don't answer the phone very much. But years ago, maybe 10 years ago, somebody did a survey about, I think it was abortion. And it asked my opinion on all these things. And my opinion was clearly in one direction. At the end, it was not a person, it was an automated thing. They said, and you believe this. And it's like, no, that is not what I believe. So I no longer do any of those.
Yeah, I feel a little sorry for polling organizations because the response rate now, which used to be very high, is like 1%. So to get 1,000 people to respond to a poll, they have to call a boatload of people to get them to respond. And they can be useful. Polls can be useful. When I worked at the library, we were trying to get a mill levy passed, and we were trying to find out how people felt about that. And it was an enormously interesting experience, and it was very useful to us. So I don't want to demonize. I mean, gosh, when you see the poll results about how our kids are using media, like if you don't have access to that information, it's hard to know what's happening and maybe how to combat it. So I would just say, pay attention to the polls that you're listening to. Other questions? Here's one.
Yeah, and on the poll, you said random versus, you didn't mention scientific. And I don't know if people think that's important to understand the difference there. I worked for an organization that did a lot of polling, and a legitimate organization will represent who they are and tell you why they're asking you what they are. And they're getting a scientific sampling that is representative of the public.
Right.
But it is also random. It's like the difference between, it's a methodology of the randomness. And that's sort of important. And again, that just goes back to really the legitimacy of the poll, who you trust, the source. And a lot has to do with timing. Early on, people will answer polls a certain way, and if they allow you to revisit them and ask the same questions later on, particularly political polls are this way. And they're very guarded and they're very specific, and there really are, experts who frame questions, and
Oh yeah, it's a whole science.
It's a
It's
really
a science.
It's not quite so random and unethical as it kind of sometimes sounds, but it's important to just, if you're relying on the information from the poll, that you understand who the source is and how they put it together.
Exactly. Great feedback. Another question back there?
I had more of a comment, and maybe you can add to it, but what I found, even from this presentation, reaffirms my strategy this year has really become assume it's fake unless you could validate that it's not. And I know that sounds horrible, but that might be a suggestion I make to others, is just assume it's not fake until you can validate that it is true, right? And it doesn't take that much to have a couple of those sites like Snopes or something handy to just do a quick check, but that would just be a suggestion I have, is make the assumption that everything you're seeing is not true until you can confirm it's true. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that or give some other suggestions.
I mean, I think it's unrealistic to expect us to fact check every single thing we see and read. But I think we can make better choices that make it harder for that, I don't have the thing up, but on the bias chart, that make it harder to deliver fake news to us. And we can just alleviate a lot of heartache. The source. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Anything? Oh, here's one.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it would be difficult to fact check everything. But, if you just, what I do is if I hear a story, I just check like 4 different news channels.
There you go.
Or news sources to see if they're reporting the same thing. They usually report the same basic fact of what's occurring, like Iran was bombed. Okay, there's a fact. But how they're reporting it is always different, depending on if it's a right-leaning, a left-leaning, or a centered type of news agency. But if you see those basic facts repeated by at least 3 or 4 different agencies, to me, that validates that the underlying fact is at least true.
Yeah, I think that's good advice too. Other? So my husband and I have started watching Brett Baer, Fox News at 4:30, local news at 5 o'clock, national news at on ABC or whatever, one of the, I should have it up there, one of the highest rated for accuracy and nonpartisanship, and then PBS after that. So we get a kind of a full range of how people are talking about stuff, and it's worked fairly well. Not perfect, but other? Oh, yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to share that I actually got a text to participate in a poll. And so I'm going to Google them and make sure it's real before I click on the link. And I also wanted to share, I was at the state capitol yesterday for a legislative event. I was on the House floor, and there were reporters from the Colorado Sun and CPR. So just reiterating the importance of the local media, and just thought I'd add that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that comment. That's great. Well, we all have our work cut out for us because with the upcoming election, I mean, if we want to have rational political discourse, we're going to have to seek it out in ourselves and others, even our family members who may not agree with us on everything. It's incumbent upon us, be the change you want to see in the world, as they say. Oh, here we go. Right, question? Comment.
More of a comment than a question on the polarization, and it is up to us. It's kind of a sad sign of the times where we meet new people, and at the end of the conversation, which never used to happen before, now it's like, wow, that comment at the end was weird. Where do you think their political affiliation is? Like stuff that wasn't part of our daily lives. We are so polarized and so, you want to pull apart from the other side because you don't want to be associated with them, or even like in sporting events. Then you go and they was like, ooh, that was a lot of them. That was scary.
That is scary.
Yeah,
and it's so sad.
It's sad. It shouldn't be part of our dailies, but
Yeah,
that's how
and
we operate.
here's the thing. I don't believe a single human being in the world wants that. I don't think any of us think this is a good thing, that we're suddenly doing this. I mean, I have people in my own family who've stopped following me on Facebook because maybe I put up one political thing that they didn't like. I mean, it happens. But we need to work really hard to bridge those divides. We just need to keep plugging at it, never give up. That's what I say. Anything else? Oh, thank you. I really appreciate everyone here because I feel like we're a little army. We can go out there and do good. So I would ask you again to please fill out the evaluation form and turn it in. I think that would be really useful to us. And I look forward to seeing you here next week to learn all about artificial intelligence. So thank you very much.
Maybe before you leave, can I see a show of hands of how many people have attended all 3 of the sessions? Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice.
It is. It's awesome. You guys are great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So on our 5th session, we're going to have panelists. So between now and 2 weeks, you might think of some questions that you want to address to the panelists, and we'll have those, write them out, and there will be some league members who will take a look at them, call the questions, and present them to the panelists.
Yeah, that would be great. And if you have questions you think of tonight, you can just write it on the back of your evaluation form. All righty. Everybody go have a nice evening. Thank you.